Years of lower house prices. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Got my stein of coffee and I thought we'd have a look at this article from Mortgage Business discussing the fact that home prices won't return to peak until the middle of a decade, or predictions of such. And I'll just fix my camera here. And if we just jump over here and we have a look, we can see our property prices. Well, they have grown slightly since 2006. You can see the peak that was reached in 2018. Look how high good old Melbourne was. Look how high good old Melbourne was. And before we have a look at the article, let's jump over and have a look at the property data room here from the Property Council of Australia, just to check what their data is on property prices at the time of this recording. So you've got lots of information here: economics, retirement living, sustainability, foreign investment. It's great to just spend your time having a look at it. But we'll go to residential here. And thanks to my NBN powered internet, we get the full experience of early internet. Remember dial-up, guys? Sometimes it feels like I'm on dial-up. So many people are using it. So the median residential home value: Sydney sitting at 930, Melbourne at 730, Canberra at 685, and this is from 30th of April, so this has been updated. It's more recent data than when we looked at it. The weighted average is 678. Brisbane is at 540, Hobart is 500, Perth 475, Darwin 470, and Adelaide at 462. And this probably could be why you're getting a lot of interest from Hong Kong in Adelaide. Maybe they'll get a lot more value for their money, particularly if you're working remotely, like the old stone buildings and concrete power poles. So home prices won't reach peak until the middle of the decade. So this is kind of counter to a lot of the FOMO articles, fear of missing out, that we're seeing. First home buyers paying hundreds of thousands above the reserve just to get in. I kind of feel sorry for that. If tough times come, you want a mortgage that you can manage on one income. I mean, some banks won't even lend to you unless you have two incomes. Housing market risks are swinging back to the downside amid a return to stricter social distancing measures, which threaten to prolong a recovery in residential property prices, a senior economist has warned. According to the latest data from property research group CoreLogic, national home values have fallen 0.8% over the past quarter, led by a cumulative decline of 3.1% in Sydney and Melbourne. The price falls come off the back of lockdown measures imposed to curb the spread of the pandemic, which induced job losses and dampened transaction activity, prompting forecast of a 20% decline in national home values over the course of 2019 and in the first half of 2020. So here's the thing. I mean, we're entering a recession. We've got all these stimulus measures that are used to prop up the economy that are going to slowly be decanted off. So we won't see the actual state of the economy without this government intervention until later. So, and they're doing everything they can. They're chucking everything they can at property. Property is such a big part of our economy. It's such a big part of our psychology. Everyone jumps into it. So, we're hearing declines of 30%, 20%, 10% over different periods of time. Why would people jump in now to buy? Why wouldn't you wait a little bit longer just to see? What's 6 months? Rents are going down anyway. Save. Just build up more cash. Now a lot of people are living cheaper than ever before. They're learning to eat from home. They're not eating out. They're not pissing money away on going out and stuff. I mean, forecasts were revised down to falls of between 5 to 10% following the rollout of fiscal support from the federal government and loan repayment holidays. I mean, just repay your loan forever. However, according to AMP Capital Chief Economist Shane Oliver, risks are swinging back to the downside amid a new round of lockdown measures in Melbourne and the threat of a second lockdown in Sydney. Prices have been coming down, but they were more consistent with the 10% decline in those two cities, he told Mortgage Business. But now with Melbourne going back into lockdown, I suspect that Melbourne is at risk of a greater decline. The risks are that we'll end up with higher effective unemployment and more businesses going bust and therefore more households running into trouble. As a result, Mr. Oliver has revised his forecast and now expects home values to fall by as much as 12 to 13% in Melbourne, with a similar scenario likely for Sydney if a second lockdown is imposed. But Mr. Oliver said other capital cities and regional lockdowns are less susceptible to sharper contractions in house values. There is a risk of a flow-on to other cities, but the other cities are perhaps not quite as vulnerable because their average debt levels are lower. They haven't had the same supply surge. They're not as vulnerable to immigration declines, and they didn't really get the boom going into 2017. I mean, here's the thing, guys. This is showing that the Candlon effect is happening in different markets at different rates. So you're getting the supply of money increasing due to housing in, say, let me bring up this chart, in, say, Melbourne. So you're getting a bubble formed in Melbourne. You're getting a bubble formed in Sydney. But it's not quite as large as other places. Look at Hobart, guys. There's definitely a bubble in Hobart. Look at that increase. It comes down to also the ability for people to afford it, because you can service a loan even if there is a bubble in the property prices, because you've got an artificially low cash rate. An artificially low cash rate. It's they're all coming in, manipulating, managing the economy. We don't have a free market, everyone. If anyone tells you we have a free market, it's insane. It's probably because, is a free market even possible with the amount of political interests that people have? I would argue it's the ideal we need to strive for. It's the ideal we need to strive for. I don't know if there's the political will in Australia to actually achieve it. Well, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. So back to this. If you take a look at Perth and Darwin, they've been in a bust since 2014, so they don't have the degree of overvaluation that exists in Sydney and Melbourne. According to the AMP Economist, it will be years before the value of homes in Sydney and Melbourne return to their peak in 2017, given the impact of subdued population growth and on housing demand. Historically in Australia over the last decade, it's been the lack of supply relative to high levels of immigration and population growth which has kept prices elevated and in a broad upward trend, he noted. So there you go, guys. That's what has been driving up a housing bubble. And that's why we've had all people, just investment money pushed towards housing to perpetuate this bubble. The states love it for their stamp duty. People love it to minimize their tax. It's not as risky as starting a business. You don't have to deal with staff. You don't have to deal with employment changes. You don't have the sovereign risk of the government changing and then all the rules around employment changing. On balance, I suspect we will not see prices getting back to previous highs until around the middle of the decade. So 2025, everyone. 2025. And just think about how much inflation is going to occur between then and then. Is he accounting for those prices adjusted for inflation? What are the predictions for gold to be in 2025, everyone? Just put it out there. Putting it out there. AMP Capital's chief economist also flagged downside risks associated with the recent tightening of lending standards, which he said may have the very effect they're trying to avoid. That could well happen here. The tightening by the banks exacerbates the downswing and then ultimately causes more weakness in the economy, which then leads to more forced selling of houses and puts more downward pressure on prices, he told Mortgage Business. So there's the risk if we start seeing additional forced selling. And, well, remember, it's the last house in your street that affects your price. It's not what you pay for it. It's not your fees, your emotions. It's the last house that's sold in the suburb. The last house that's sold in your area. That's what they look at. That's what's going to affect it. If you're in Sydney and your neighbour sold for 870, this 930 is irrelevant. If in Brisbane, 540 is the median. If a neighbour up the street can't sell for 400, what's your house worth? And it's when these forced sales start to materialize, that's when we'll start to see the real impact of this. We're not seeing the real impact of the recession. We're just in the baby steps of it, everyone. We'll have to wait and see. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on it. Do you think house prices won't see the peaks until 2025? Or will it be longer? Or will inflation have hit such a point where your purchasing power won't matter if it's at that peak? As always, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support us, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can use any of our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.